Have you ever noticed that the loudest person in the room is often the least informed? The one making bold statements with absolute confidence, only for you to realize they have no idea what they're talking about? And then, on the other hand, you meet someone who's actually an expert, maybe a doctor, scientist, or engineer, and they keep saying things like, "Well, it's complicated," or "I could be wrong. I could be..." Why is it that the people who know the least are often the most confident, while the people who know the most tend to doubt themselves? This strange paradox has a name: the Dunning-Kruger Effect. Back in 1999, psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger ran a set of clever experiments. They tested people on things like grammar, logical reasoning, and even humor. Then, they asked participants to rate how well they thought they had done. Here's the twist: the people who scored the lowest consistently overestimated their performance. And the people who scored the highest often underestimated themselves. The researchers discovered a cognitive bias. When you lack knowledge in a subject, you also lack the awareness to recognize your own mistakes. In other words, you're too ignorant to even realize how ignorant you are. That's the Dunning-Kruger effect in a nutshell. So, why does this happen? It comes down to a weird flaw in how the brain works. To evaluate your skill in something, you actually need that very skill. If you're terrible at math, you also don't have the mathematical insight to see just how terrible you are. If you can't sing, you might not hear how off-key you sound. It's like trying to proofread your own essay with a blindfold on. You don't see the mistakes because you don't even know what mistakes look like. Meanwhile, experts face the opposite problem. The more you learn about a subject, the more you realize how vast and complicated it actually is. A beginner might think, "I know what anxiety is. It's just stress." A psychologist thinks, "Well, anxiety is influenced by genetics, environment, neurochemistry, cognitive patterns, and dozens of other factors we still don't fully understand." The beginner oversimplifies. The expert hesitates because they know how much they don't know. You don't have to look far to see this effect in action. Think about the coworker who confidently gives financial advice while being perpetually broke. Or the uncle at family dinner who explains how the economy works based on a couple of Facebook posts. It's the person who just learned a new diet trend yesterday and now acts like a world-class nutritionist. Or the guy who watched a few conspiracy videos on YouTube and suddenly thinks he has cracked the code of world politics. Meanwhile, actual economists, nutritionists, and scientists are the ones constantly saying, "It's complicated," or "We need more data." The Dunning-Kruger effect doesn't just create confident idiots. It also creates quiet geniuses who underestimate themselves. And that combination can shape entire societies. You might be wondering, okay, funny examples, but why does this matter? Well, confidence is persuasive. In politics, business, and even social media, people don't necessarily follow the most competent person. They follow the most confident one. If you say something with enough certainty, people assume you must know what you're talking about. This is why the Dunning-Kruger effect can be dangerous. It can put people who are misinformed, but confident, in positions of power and influence. And it can silence those who are genuinely skilled, but more cautious with their words. Think about debates on climate change, vaccines, or economics. The loudest voices are not always the smartest ones. So, how do you spot the Dunning-Kruger effect in the wild? A good clue is about oversimplicity. If someone explains a complex issue with absolute certainty and makes it sound easy, that's a red flag. Reality is rarely simple. Another sign is the inability to admit doubt or error. Experts change their minds when new evidence comes in. Non-experts just double down and get louder. So, the next time someone acts like they've solved geopolitics in a 5-minute rant, chances are you're looking at Dunning-Kruger in action. But here's the tricky part. We're all vulnerable to this bias. Not just other people. Have you ever had that phase where you just learned something new and suddenly felt like an expert? Maybe you started learning guitar, and within a week you thought, hey, I'm not bad at this. Fast forward a year and you realize, wow, I was terrible back then. That's Dunning-Kruger in your own life. The less you knew, the more confident you were. The more you learned, the more humble you became. This is why true experts often carry that quiet humility. Not because they lack confidence, but because they understand complexity. If you look at a graph of the Dunning-Kruger effect, it almost looks like a roller coaster. At the very beginning, when you know nothing, your confidence is low. Then, as you learn a little bit, confidence shoots way up. This is sometimes called Mount Stupid. From there, reality sets in. You realize how much you don't know, and confidence plummets into the valley of despair. Eventually, with true expertise, confidence slowly climbs back up, but never to the same overconfident peak as before. It's humbling and also kind of funny because most of us ride this curve many times in our lives. So how do we deal with this? First, adopt a simple mindset. Be skeptical of certainty. If something sounds too simple, it probably is. Second, value people who admit they don't know. That's often a sign of wisdom, not weakness. And third, check yourself. When you feel overly confident in a new skill or idea, pause and ask, what don't I know yet? Because the truth is, we all have our blind spots. The real danger isn't being ignorant. It's being ignorant and thinking you're not. So the next time you meet a know-it-all who confidently lectures you on a subject they barely understand, remember, they might just be climbing Mount Stupid. And the next time you doubt yourself, when you think, maybe I don't know enough, consider this. That very humility might mean you're wiser than you think. Because in a world full of confident idiots, a little self-doubt might actually be a sign of intelligence.